Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of April 20th, 2017. I am your host, Jose Otero, and coming up on Nintendo Voice Chat, this is our big The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Spoilercast, and this is a big deal, something we've been building up to for a while. If anything, we owe you an apology for waiting for a month. But we're going to go through why open air is one of the best things that happened to Zelda. We're also going to talk about how Nintendo approached the story and whether they were successful or in some places where they weren't. We are also going to talk about puzzle. Everything under the hood is up for discussion. So if you don't want spoilers, you are in the wrong video right now. But joining me to talk about it this week, we have Brendan Graeber.
How you doing?
We have Brian Altano.
What's up?
Who does not brap anymore.
Yes, I do.
What? You're not
It's been
brapping?
brap free for about a year now.
That's not true. I
on
put
the
some on a
patch?
little show. I put it on another show here and there.
patch.
Maybe when you got skinny, like the ability to brap kind of went away, like the necessary flap.
It's kind of a
Brap.
There we go. And Per Schneider.
Hello, Jose.
All right, we have a lot to talk about, and this is an important game for us to really discuss because, I mean, on the site, we weren't the only ones, but we gave it a 10, and I think it's important to just put up front for the audience. The 10 is a masterpiece on IGN, but it is in no way a perfect game.
Right.
And so there will be critical discussion here for pros and for cons, and it's something that's very important. Our highest recommendation only means that we hope the industry at large will look at this game as a point of inspiration, as something that we think everyone should play.
Yeah, I mean that's to me a 10 says don't even think about it. You're gonna play this and you're gonna love it. There's always the odd person who walks away and says that's not what I wanted. But I mean, I know so many people have played this game and it put smiles on everyone's face.
Agree. Yeah. All right, so then let's kick things off with our first topic, and it is about open air, and specifically this concept of open world, but sort of magnified in a very different way. Open air touched every single part of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and in some ways there were positives, and in some there weren't. To me, open air felt like Nintendo's answer to self-discovery.
Yeah.
And to this idea that they wanted you to figure things out. And I think the way they went about doing it was really elegant, and we got our first taste of it at E3 when we played The Great Plateau. And that's everyone's first taste of how it works, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, like, I keep thinking about just the concept of that game, that you can climb anything, go anywhere, and as you build up your character, you can climb a little bit more, but like there are very few limitations that keep you out of something, right? Like very few barriers at all, except for around the map. And like, the reason why other developers don't do this is it's so hard to test that.
Right.
Make sure it's balanced and that you can't break it, and that, you know, and like also just kind of from a pacing and discovery perspective, they want to lead you down a path even in an open world game, right? Where like maybe in a Grand Theft Auto, the airport isn't open and you don't have an airplane yet or something. Like they kind of nudge you in the right direction. In this game, they just said, screw it, you build your story and determine the order of things. And I kind of keep on thinking it's really hard to go back after that.
It really is, and I think it's like, you know, we cover a lot of open world games here at IGN. I specifically love open world games. Just this year alone, I had just played Horizon just before this, which I adored. And last year, stuff like Watch Dogs. The year before, you know, Far Cry, Assassin's Creed.
Also really looking forward to Red Dead.
Of course, yeah, I can't wait. But I think what a lot of those games share is they follow a pattern of sort of like climbing something very tall, opening up all these little tick boxes to check off, and then going down and discovering them. But I think what they lack is growth of your own personal character. And like Perry, you just nailed it. Like you are better at climbing by the end of that game. You are better at fighting, you have better weapons. In Assassin's Creed, you can kind of run up a building at the beginning the same way you can at the end, right? And I think the same goes for a lot of ways, but a lot of games. And I look at Breath of the Wild as this adventure of childlike discovery, of walking out in this world, being somewhere brutal and cold and unforgiving, and then there's a sunset or a sunrise, and you come over and there's a mountain that you've never seen before. But the more you go, the better you get, the stronger you become, the better you become at cooking and eating and fighting and living and breathing and climbing, everything, little by little, without like all of the weird little video gamey menu stuff of like filling up bars and filling up boxes. It doesn't feel that way.
And the little helping elements, like in a lot of classic Zelda games, you go into a room and there's like an eye at the wall and you have your bow and arrow and you're out of arrows. You know, if you chop one of the like bushes or something, you'll get arrows.
Yeah.
Whereas in this game, you could go into a shrine and the solution to a puzzle could be much simpler if you had fire arrows with you, or if you just had a stick in some cases, right?
Well, and the big difference is it isn't scenario driven, right? Like we're used to an open world running up to someone who then sort of, it is required that you talk to that person, and it's very, the game is constantly pulling you towards that person for the most part. The UI, you think of Assassin's Creed and when you like get on top of one of those beautiful vista shots they have, but then what it will do is unlock the portion of your map where it says, okay, there's like 30 of these quests and you're gonna go out and explore it. Whereas Zelda's answer is, no, we're gonna show you topography.
Right.
We're not gonna tell you what's in there. That's on you to figure out. Brendan.
Yeah, there's also, I think, what you were saying, like, to account for every possible thing you can do is something that people don't think about a lot. Like you have to, for a game like this, they had to make sure that if you wanted to go left off the Great Plateau, there would be something for you there and the game could continue. Like if you didn't want to go to Impa, that's cool. Go off to a divine beast. Zelda will tell you about it. And like if you want to go to Impa, that's fine. But if you want to like skip past the character, somebody else will be there to fill you in.
When you specifically were testing this, I remember during the whole review process and talking to you, and you were like, yeah, so I made my way to the Zora, and there's one way to talk about what we talked. Do you remember this conversation?
Yeah, so I was doing the walkthrough for how to get to Zora's Domain, and there's a lot of characters around the outskirts of the Lanrio Tower who are Zora, like, hey, by the way, some prince guy's looking for you.
Sidon wants to talk to you.
Yeah, they kind of direct you there, but you can actually go around him. It's hard because it's rain everywhere, but you can just side skip him entirely, go all the way to Zora's Domain and talk to the king, and he shows up. He's like, oh, hey, where'd you come from?
And he gets a different intro. It's still an introduction,
Yep.
as if you met him by the bridge.
It makes you wonder, like, how did they think of that? Like, how many scenarios did they create, and how many different diversions did they write around and write towards? Like,
Years of testing.
it's incredible.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting with this game is that they had to predict what players would do, right? Like, and I'm sure it grew over time, and that's why it took so long, got delayed, right? Like once they discovered, oh, electricity, it's got to affect the weapons, like, and they kind of built on that. I think different scenarios and stories and side quests also developed. Like there is, a side quest where lightning keeps on hitting one of the stables, and like, the solution is obviously related to something metal. But what I thought was most intriguing with this game is that it still, like as a player who's used to being funneled down a story and pacing and a certain pace, I didn't start this game and go like, I'm going to go right to the castle. Right. Like I'm like, tens of Zelda games have trained me. The castle is where Ganon is. That's the end. I'm not even going to go there. I didn't have the courage to go there, right? And you could, like, you can. I know you did a little bit of a test, like for a video, like, can you actually survive and running in there? And obviously, after playing a long time, you can probably with 3 hearts make it in just fine because you know the game systems. But like, the game just made you think in a way that was different. It wasn't about I'm going to get to this point Z in the story. It was I got to really develop my character before I get the courage. It's a quest for courage, right? Like. You just got to do all these things. I'm going to ignore that place.
Right.
I'm going to just put a hand over the map and not go there.
Mm-hmm. And think about the way other open world games push back on you in walling sections off and stuff like that, or specifically the Zelda games, right? Like Ocarina of Time, you're in Hyrule Village, or you're in Kakariko Village where you start out, and you can't walk past that guy standing in front of the tree stump hole. He's like, no, and he's like, does this like dodging.
Mido just win.
And in Breath of the Wild, you'd just be like, get out of the way. You'd climb over him. You'd climb around him.
You don't see some people. You don't realize they're there. Yeah, and that was. I mean, the open air concept is so cool, just from a technical perspective, that it works with all the climbing and parachuting and like all the things you can do, like the updraft system. When you set something on fire, that you can keep on flying. That is so cool. But just the notion that after 140 hours in, I find a forest that I've never been to. Like I just ignored it somehow on the map. Where the lights go out, that forest?
That forest. No, we all know that's
so cool that there are still secrets after over 100 hours.
Well, and it's interesting that you point out that there's a lot of prediction happening, but I also feel there's a lot of being very considerate of where's the best place to do this.
Right.
I'll give you a couple of examples. Great Plateau is one of my favorite places in this game, and I feel like I talk about it a lot, but it's only because it's so elegant. The first Resurrection Tower you're at, you can clearly see where all 4 shrines are, and it is the quick tutorial of this is how you find things. You got to stand on something very tall.
Yeah.
My second favorite example, though, this is the example I'm actually driving towards, was when you got the glider. You are standing on one of the tallest buildings on that plateau, and there is a wide open window in front of you. So the build up to get the glider leads to this immediate payoff of, go ahead.
Yeah.
You're going to have fun.
Take the
Jump
leap.
and take the leap, pull out your glider and soar.
It's like it's baby birding, basically, right?
Yeah,
like they're just kind of like, you can do this.
Interestingly enough, though, they could have done that at any shrine. But when you think about it, 2 of those shrines were on flat ground. 2 of them were on high ground. And so the solution became, no, let's put you inside of the Temple of Time instead.
And the only times the game attempts to sort of like quarter in that freedom a little bit is with temporal changes. And even that, like, that's the kind of pushback that like I appreciated, because it made me go like, well, do I need clothes for this, or I can eat peppers?
Yeah.
I went to the area in the Goron town for the first time, just literally on fire, eating apples like a screaming crazy person until I went into the store and bought
Flaming
the clothes.
apples.
Yeah, and I was just like, eating apples, running around. But like, I talked to other people, they were like, dude, that's not the way you're supposed.
You didn't go to the stable and learn about the
there's
potion?
so many other ways
But
to
there's
do
a
that.
Goron. If you talk to the first Goron you see, which I did, I don't know if the game is programmed to recognize this, but he says, "Oh man, you should go to the store. We sell like flame retardant outfits." And I was like, "How does he know?" And I just ran in on fire, and like dunked in there, like to try and get the outfit.
No, it's a good point. Like the game limits you, but it doesn't prevent you, right? Like if you remember, like Super Metroid, you'll open the door and you run in and you go because you're taking damage from the heat the whole time. You can still explore a little bit and like run as fast as you
then
can.
run away.
But in this game, you have so many solutions to making it through the hot area, including like finding somebody at the stable who will sell you a potion or tell you how to brew a potion.
Or you just eat a bunch of frozen meat like a crazy person. Like, it's great.
Or you have a cold weapon on your back, right? Like all these things, all these ways to beat those limitations, which never existed in the Zelda games. Like if you saw a temple that you could only enter with a hook shot, you could only enter it with a hook shot. There was
you
no
glitch
way
the game
around
out.
it.
Well, and that was the thing I think that became the brick wall to them was we have to give you all of the items up front. And we can't, they didn't have the confidence to account for you not having the item you needed.
Yeah.
And I think that in a game that was trying to break a lot of convention and be very different, the unfortunate part was you never got that hook shot. You never got a new tool.
Right.
You had to, but they found a lot of ingenious ways for you to use the tools you had. I mean, 120 shrines is nothing to sneeze at.
No, totally.
100 of them were great, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the total that I would hit. The 20 extra were a combination of those motion shrines that
And test of combat for the 50th time.
combat trials, but like motion shrines to me were just, they didn't feel right using the Switch itself in many occasions. And it was something that really kind of bummed me out because it's not a bad concept. I just don't think that the Switch handles them well.
Yeah, I would have loved a couple of things in the world where you are truly stumped and you get a hint that you need a special key or item to open it. Like, I think it would have actually helped if there was something that was tailored towards the boomerang, which you can find in all sorts of places. You don't have to complete one temple to get it. But like if there was something tied to it, I would have liked it. There's one thing, there's the trident, for example.
That's
if you
an
guys
example of
remember,
it.
there's one temple that you raise by using the trident. But there weren't enough of those where the game made you feel like, oh, this is a really hard puzzle. In near Kakariko, there was you see the ball, the orange ball in Impa's house.
Oh wait, did you figure
And
that
that-
out?
yeah, I figured that out. But so
I
I'm not
guess
gonna
you could say. No,
I'm
you
not,
could.
no, I'm not
This
gonna
is
say it. but-
Spoilercast, get it out
Go
there.
ahead, let it go. Let it fly.
Well, no, it was that limitation was based on not having completed the quest in Kakariko Village. You needed to talk to someone who will not tell you about this quest unless you completed all the other things.
Oh, so
You know,
it's
so there was
interesting. It's like the Gerudo the Gerudo helmet in the Gerudo town.
Correct.
You had to do everything in order to be able to borrow that.
Yeah, and then, but it
never
wasn't
getting
even
it
that
back, by
easy.
the way.
You actually had to know to talk to this one person too, and it reminded me of Majora's Mask, where like you followed someone to see what they did, and then you're like, wait, what is she doing? And then you follow the person home, and you learn about the quest, and then it actually, you haven't done this yet, but it's really cool.
done it yet,
So I will not give away the solution, but you can follow different people, and you don't know who did it.
It's a whodunit?
Someone steals the orb. and you have to
Somebody
figure out who
steals
did
the
it.
orb.
Oh.
And so you don't know who did it, and you can be like, wait, I'm sure it's this person.
So I just get to be Columbo. So where were you on the 20?
Just one last question. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. But yeah, I thought those deeper mysteries were really interesting to me. Or like there's a pedestal. Whenever there was a pedestal and you're looking at it and you're like, what do I do? Right? And then the solution is like, get naked. Or, in some cases there were some more involved ones with if you remember, the shadow from a tower or something.
Yeah, I think for me, some of the mystery was also in the smart world design of like, you're on that tower, but there's so many cool things in every direction. I'm like, oh, look at that weird looking mountain, or look at that swamp with lightning all around it. Like, what's that? Like, everything looks enticing.
That swamp was crazy.
Yeah, and you just see that cloud. You're just like, I don't see that anywhere else.
One, I didn't expect it to keep raining. Like, I'm in there and I'm trying to do what the shrine quest that pops up is asking me to do. I think it was like gather these orbs that were placed around, and because it's raining, you can't really climb anything. It's painful, but it's a smart painful. I like that they went for that. But I realized, man, this cloud's not leaving. Like, what is the deal? And then I realized, it always rains here. I remember, because this was on my second playthrough, by the way. On my first playthrough, I just noticed it's always raining there. But then I'd be like, off on adventure.
I do think it's important to mention that rain can be a real pain in this game. And I mean, there are times where it's like comical, where you're like, all right, I got to get right there. I got everything I need. I cooked all my food, and damn it, and you're just slipping down the side.
I think I spent about an hour trying to climb one of the labyrinths on the island because it kept raining like days of rain.
But you can build a fire, right?
Yeah,
like you can
there's
build
ways
a
around
fire,
it.
and like it dawned on me pretty late, like probably like 30 hours into the game. I'm like, oh, there's a weather forecast gauge. I'm like, it is sunny. It is sunny tomorrow. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna like find a safe spot and like wait.
I didn't even know that.
I didn't realize
I had no idea.
That's what that was. So on the second playthrough, which has been way more. I mean, I've loved it more on the second trip than on the first, believe it or not. But I turned it all off because you have Pro UI. And so I didn't know that they were forecasting the weather for you. But I will say that, the rain is tied to some comical moments. And what I think Open Air ended up
torch quests. Every time you try to do a torch-based quest,
God.
it starts to rain.
I thought that was just part of the script, and I was texting like 7 of my friends, and I was like, dude, this game is really hard. And they're like, oh, it's a sunny day.
Everybody's looking for guide help for that one quest. I'm like, what are you talking about? It was sunny for me.
Yep.
No, I agree.
The hardest enemy in that game
is rain.
Rain.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that so Open Air to me also turned into a great avenue for you to tell your own stories.
Yep.
And we're going to get into this game's story a little further in the program. But I do love the amount of conversation and how we had those conversations. Because even though you kind of wanted to walk on eggshells, be like, well, I don't know if so-and-so has been that far. But every story felt unique. Every experience felt unique. And I've played big open world games, but I've never felt like I had this many stories to tell. And that every discovery in the first 20 hours was like mind-blowing to me in a large or small capacity.
Well, like I just tweeted out the other day, but like an awesome NVC fan animated one of the stories I did in this show. And that was a very personal story I had with a bone horse that no one else I know had, right? But then I put that out on Twitter, and a bunch of other people were just like, here's pictures of my bone horse. And here's like the way that happened with me. So I think there's just something really interesting about all that. Because you think about like the starting line and the finish line to this game. The starting line is you're a kid, you got to go save some stuff, blah, 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 Zelda. The finish line is beat Ganon, right? Everything in between, you're kind of like, there's going to be some items, some dungeons, some temples, that kind of stuff. Pretty straightforward. I don't think a lot of people really walked out of, say Skyward Sword with so many of their own personal stories. But this one, between those two very straightforward start and finish lines, is just this miracle of game design that has caused us all to talk about this video game in the way I've never talked about any video game with my friends before.
And you know what's they're so clever with how they incentivize you to check something out, right? Like they make you cook by introducing the elements, right? And you're like, oh, I can survive here if I make myself this potion, right? So they don't force you to do it. They just kind of say like, oh, if you do this, maybe you can do that, right? When you're upgrading your armor, suddenly you will look at ingredients that you thought were the most commonplace and boring, like freaking fireflies or something, which you caught in the beginning. You're like, I don't need any fireflies. And then you get this armor and it needs fireflies to upgrade. And suddenly you're on a quest. Or like Lionels. Like I always ran from Lionels for a long time. I'm like, not worth it. And then I
Right.
get an armor set, and I'm like, Lionel horns, Lionel,
Yep.
Lionel hooves, and all that
Sharpening
stuff.
sword,
Or like
ready to
the
go.
Koroks want something from a Lionel, and like suddenly now you become a freaking bounty hunter. You put on your freaking mask and you go out there and you just hunt them all down.
Yeah,
So cool.
It touched dungeons, and it touched specifically the last area you will explore before you finish the game
Yeah.
in an interesting way as well. I thought, let's start with dungeons.
Sure.
I enjoyed the fact that I felt like I was inside of a large machine. Something that when I realized that there's an extra mechanic in manipulating the space. I don't think I've seen a Zelda do that in that capacity, and maybe someone can correct me on this.
Fire Temple is the only one, really, right?
Actually, no, the Stone Temple. The
Oh.
Stone Temple in Majora's Mask was that time where you're going through that temple and you're like, that last asset looked like it was upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know
Why
what
is that
that
chest
is, but
upside
then-
down?
But then you find out,
Yeah.
I got to run outside and whoop, and you turn it over. Now, granted, back then the technology was limited, but this was a real-time version of that.
You're right.
And I think the interesting part of it is that it's great spectacle your first 2 times. I think it is not as interesting your 3rd and 4th time.
But that's
agree with
true.
that.
But like if you remember like the Fire Temple, the Water Temple, Nintendo always played with the notion that you step into a space and then you do something and it changes it, right? Like in Ocarina of Time actually had a lot of these puzzles where like the Forest Temple, you twist a hallway and it turns the next room on its side, right?
sure.
And then
But it
the
was
Fire
one
Temple has an elevator, and the Water Temple, suddenly you're underwater, you can no longer like leap somewhere or something.
Those
right?
still felt like mechanics versus manipulating and affecting the entire space.
They changed the room,
Yeah.
whereas in this game, you could change part of a room. Like if you think about the camel, like it's just one giant
Cylinder.
hallway. Like
Yeah,
it's a cylinder, but you can rotate pieces of it and create a completely different walkway. And you had to really go, how the heck do I get up there? And you really had to use the maps too to find the points to get to. And in some cases, I was looking at the structure. I'm like, I don't know how to get there. Like I guess I can use the gale to fly up there, and then but like how would you have done it if you didn't have it? And you start to figure
I
out
did
the
it
solutions.
without it, and I found it interesting. Really quickly, before we go further with dungeons, what was your completion order? Each person, like, do you remember the order in which you defeated them?
Elephant first.
Okay,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did fish first.
elephant,
is elephant.
fish. Oh no, that's the elephant. Yeah.
Elephant.
Oh, yeah,
is
the elephant.
Yeah.
Yeah, elephant.
Okay,
Fish
second.
look like this. Elephants are the ones with a trunk.
Yeah. Second shrine.
Second shrine was
job.
what do we have? We have bird.
Okay,
And
bird. My second was camel.
Me too.
Vanaboris.
Mine was lizard.
Okay. And the salamander.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
I did.
third.
I did camel next, and then
Bird.
salamander.
Salamander.
Bird.
Salamander last for me.
Salamander last. Yeah.
What was
the
your
fourth
last one?
Goron.
Goron.
Okay.
No, that's the salamander. The fire one.
The bird was my fourth.
Bird was
Bird
your
was
last
your
one.
last one.
Okay.
Camel was my last one.
Okay, we're not referring to them by names, but I just think that the order in which you discovered them impacted your favorite and non-favorite, which we'll get to later.
See, to me, I'm always scared of the fire area. Like it's just like whenever I went to the Goron, I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to have to deal with all the heat and all the stuff, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna do one of the other ones first.
Well,
And-
it's like I was talking to my friends who played this game the way we did. Everyone who split off in different directions came back as different people. Like it's like one dude came back with like a British accent and sunburns and stuff like that. Like you come in with new armor and you're like, where did you get that? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, dude, I was in the desert for like a week. And I was like, really? I was like in the mountains. Like
That's a great observation.
Yeah, you can see by the
Yeah.
clothes for sure. Like people get like favorite clothes too.
Yeah.
Like even when you're not in the snow, you're still wearing that outfit. You look like Sherpa Link or something.
yeah, just people emerge from the jungle or the desert or the snow.
It's
as
your little
different-
bikini outfit.
Yeah, and they've
You
got
go back and dye your armor.
Yeah, they're eating different types of meat and they've got different clothes on. They're like, who is this man? You know?
Nice.
I didn't think about that.
Well, and it felt very cultural as a result, right?
Yeah.
Like it felt like, okay, the East belongs to the Kakariko village, and so each village had a very, except for Hateno. Hateno, I felt was like this melting pot to me somewhat.
Yeah.
As a
It
village,
felt a
like-
bit more homogenous than the others. Whereas like Gerudo Palace is still very much girls only, and
Yeah.
there's a secret shop, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I love that quest.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
one of my
Hateno was
favorites.
almost the replacement for Castle Town. You know, just like a bunch of shops, and then it obviously had the lab up high on the hill, so you
you
could
had the
fly
Rito.
down into.
Yeah, yeah.
Like just the design, like the fact that you warp to the lab and then you float down into the village, like it's just like they really thought about feel of the game, like how you arrive in something. It's so
Right.
good.
Yeah, and even in the case of the Rito, just that habitat, like looking like space, and you're going up this spire, and there are all these.
I started realizing, and I was talking about this with Zach Ryan, who I do link together with here at IGN. Plug. You should watch that. We every time we would beat a shrine or beat 4 shrines, and we'd go to cash in our orbs, we would warp to Kakariko Village.
Yep.
To the shrine right there.
Yeah.
Run off that cliff, grab 2 apples on the way down.
Yes, always get
Land, see the statue, and I was like, he was like, there's like a dozen different places you can cash in this game. Why do we both keep going to there? And I'm like, it's just cool. I just like going to, that's my spot.
good
Like,
feeling.
it's like, well, why do you go shopping at like, Whole Foods or Stop and Shop? Like, why do you go to, what's your grocery store in your
did
town?
most of my upgrades in that town too, even though Hateno there's one, and
There's
like
no
you get
reason
the-
for it. You just kind of connect with it after a while.
Yep.
It's your walk home,
Easily the most interesting space in the game, though, was Hyrule Castle.
Oh yeah.
For many reasons, and it's a space that the earlier you enter and work up the courage to look around, the more interesting the discoveries you find. Even I love how subtle it is.
You feel like you're not supposed to be there. That's the whole thing. It's like, stay out, basically.
What I love too is it's not just this hostile space that you're not supposed to be at. It's also that the game will never explain, but when you know how it'll just label places and tell you, oh, this is this chapel or this is this space.
Yep.
And I would constantly be like, this is so cool. And I'd get no context. I'd get no, if this was another game, I'd feel like I'd find a diary that's like, and on our last day, we found blah, like
Yeah.
this
You
game
found a
does
couple
fantastic
diaries. A couple of those.
You did, but you didn't get a ton.
Yeah.
And what I really admired was that it left it up to you. Like it really was about you got to wonder what happened.
It was storytelling through environment.
Yeah, and that's I think is preferred. I don't know if I ever appreciated as much not having all the answers.
Right.
I thought this through. The fort outside with all the guardians looked. There's a
Something
revelation
happened
in the memories, but like
spoiler
you come
cast,
to
you can say.
but you come to the fort and you see all the guardians were like shut down while climbing the fortress, like the walls and everything, and just like they didn't need to explain what happened. You just looked at it and you felt like big bad stuff happened here, and then
Right.
somehow they all got shut down. Thanks so.
I kind of considered it to be like the 5th and my favorite temple or divine beast, and it's the one of the 5 that is the most sort of combat and stealth driven, or definitely, not even close.
It's really up to you.
Yeah, it's really up to you. But like you look at the other divine beasts, like going into those, like interacting with the camel. The stage is the puzzle, and there's maybe like one little guardian in there. Like there's not a lot of enemies.
Couple, yeah,
like
yeah.
you don't like. I would always like staff up with a whole bunch of food and a bunch of weapons, then go in there and be like, oh, that's right. I don't really need these until I get to the Ganon, at the end of each one. But Hyrule Castle was a war zone, and you could go in any direction, and you're in the basement and you're fighting like that stone, that
Silver Lionel.
the silver Lionel, or like the bone Hinox, or
Stalnox.
like Stalnox, who leaves that shield behind. That's just
Yeah.
the iconic shield that I ended
That
up
was
carrying the
a
rest of
fun
the game.
discovery too, because I ran in. A friend was over playing, and he just cleared the Great Plateau, and we were all just getting ready to call it a day. And he's like, "Why don't you? I dare you to run in because you played this game, right?" I'm like, "It's too early, and only 3 hearts. I don't know if I want to do that." He's like, "Do it." Ran through, and I stumbled upon all of that network of
tunnels and stuff.
tunnels and
Yeah.
railroad tracks. And it led me to where you get the shield. I was like, I reviewed this game and didn't find it.
You wouldn't let me tell you. I was so
away.
upset. I was just like, I need to tell someone what I found. Alana, come with me. I need to tell you something.
The cell block in particular, I walked in and I'm like, Link to the Past flashbacks.
Yes,
where
yes.
you got the ooh guy like in Link to the Past in the cell blocks, but
one who swings
now you
the-
see it
the,
all, like one of the
Audio
dark
listeners who
nuts.
can't
Yeah,
see you do what you just
yeah, I
did.
was swinging a morning star.
There's an entire river.
but
down
he's
there.
not in there. He's not in there.
Like there's a river down there. There's a minecart sequence that leads to a talus.
Boiling puddles you can put eggs into.
You can also
Did you see
sit in
those?
them
No,
and-
I didn't know
If
you
you
could
put an
boil
egg
eggs.
into the boiling puddles, they become boiled
make
eggs.
poached eggs in it?
Boiled eggs, yeah.
Not just that, you can sit in the hot spring puddle and you'll just get health back.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Very
so
Japanese,
awesome.
by the way. How they
and then
love hot
and then there's a big banquet hall with like food still on the table, a bunch of like moblins and boboclines,
I saw that one.
goblins running around. If you go to the fireplace, you can see a weapon in it, and you have to use magnesis to get it out. Like
you know what
just
else
these
they did?
little playful things. There are walls that are barricaded that you can bomb, all that stuff.
Oh, and there are walls you can move where you
the
discover
library,
two
hidden
very
walls.
interesting
Yeah.
diaries that we're going to get into when we get into story.
I love the
But at,
library.
At the top of Hyrule Castle is a Korok. And you will never get it
the
unless
first thing I
you
did.
go up there. And that is one of those like, of course they would put one there, but it's still like, nah, they wouldn't. This is like right next to that boss, man. Like I don't know if they, and that there it is.
Also, can you believe that there are side quests to go into Hyrule Castle?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, can you give me a sword from Hyrule Castle? Like, are you kidding? It's where Ganon is.
That was the motivator, and that's what I find so clever with this game is that I didn't want to go there because I always worried. I'm like, I don't want to trigger an end game before
Yeah.
I've experienced
by
everything
accident.
else, right? And so I didn't want to go there. But then this lady goes, "Oh, I really want this armor." I'm like, all right, I guess there's a reason to go.
Yep.
And then the music and everything was so freaking cool. Like the kind of like the off-key versions of the classic themes playing there. And that's like one thing about the game I love and I don't love. Like I love the piano music, but I was waiting for that moment where I get on a horse and that Zelda theme plays. You get a little bit in the north in the mountains. You get the tune playing, but there wasn't that kick-ass moment.
It'll
you know?
happen it'll happen every so often, and I think it was the result of just the world being the central character and the wild being the thing that they wanted you to sort of
Yeah.
be surrounded by. The ambient sound of you're by yourself. I think the unwanted consequence, though, is that as you sort of tame the wild, and what I mean by that is as you solve more and more shrines, you have less reasons to travel that way. You now have fast travel. And that's why if you're playing this game, my biggest recommendation to you, the thing I would say is don't fast travel unless you need to. Like ride a horse, like just go out there and see what draws your eye. Because the minute you start to just sort of ping pong and blip all over the place, I do feel like it loses that amazing part of discovery a little bit, not a ton.
I would always just set my my sensor, and like hopefully if you're still playing this game, you're looking for things, you're using your sensor and taking pictures of items, and that's kind of like a meta quest to take all the pictures, right? Watch out with the Ganons. Remember to take pictures. But like I would walk and set down set like peppers or something, whatever I needed to upgrade armor. I would set that as my target, and that really incentivizes you to walk because you always see that next lizard or that next object.
Yeah, and absolutely. But another place where music and combat sort of come together in a way that you and I talked about that you really appreciated, Pear, was how defeating a mid-boss had this awesome timed piano solo that led with a boom and it would be done. Like when you finish fighting a steep talus.
When the talus blows up, it actually is part of the music. It was like dun 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 dun,
Right, which is like, from a musical perspective, is an incredibly difficult thing to do, to time that narrative to go. Because like
First I thought it was coincidence. Then I'm like, man, they did that. They actually timed it exactly.
it's so smart.
Yeah,
It's so
with
smart.
every mid-boss except, I don't know if Lynels have a theme.
Yeah,
I don't think they do.
No, they
just
just have
generic.
that terrifying question mark over
Yeah.
there. They're like, But I love like that jazzy sound that song that plays when you're fighting a Hinox. Like,
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
it's so good.
Such a comedy.
And he's just like, "Roar," and he's coming. It's very, very comedic.
Yeah, no,
Like,
I
and all
agree.
the different ways you can attack him, and how the music swells around that. You light his foot on fire, and then shoot him in the eye. Yeah, like it's so great.
I guess we'll talk about bosses in a little bit, but
We
like
should now.
there aren't a lot of like traditional like Zelda like bosses in this game, right? Like that was one of I missed that. I love the like going into an empty room and then like the spider is watching you from the ceiling or the snake rises out of the water.
And start pounding the drum.
Yeah. Oh God, bongo. So I was missing that a little bit, but I did really appreciate how you could happen upon these kind of bosses in the open landscape and like the musical cues towards them, just kind of going like, is that
Right.
you know, like from far away, like what are these bones? Is that a Stalnox or is that just a bunch of bones? Like that I really, really liked.
And no boss was impossible as a result. I think in making a game where you can encounter these things at any time, they sort of had to face the fact that you kind of should have a small chance somewhat. And I feel like that's why Steep Talus will eventually lose his edge once you realize if I have a hammer, this is a wrap. Like, all I need to do is the spin attack on that little weak spot, and we're done. Until you find another variety where that weak spot is on his butt.
like
a whole other issue there. But that
like
was
with
fun
exactly like with the step talus, you can just get on top of it because it's just a rock. But then you get the ice one, and if you're not impervious to freezing,
And he wrecked me.
you can't climb on it.
Yeah,
right?
I was like,
And the lava one, there's a fire one. Yeah,
I had like 16 hearts and all the highest level weapons in the game, and he still whooped my ass.
And so like the one thing I really loved because the discovery happened later in the game. Like you see your Lionel in the beginning, probably get your butt whooped and then stay out of their way for a while, right?
Well, they steer you towards one too in the Zora quest.
But you don't have to fight them. You can just steal the arrows.
Most people, I would
buy
bet
arrows.
you, ran right up to start the fight, and then they got wrecked, and were like, I know my place now. I'm going to go just grab those arrows.
But you see all of those fairly early in the game. But the Stalnox one, basically the skeleton version of the big Hinox guy, right? Like the one-eyed monster. You find him pretty late once you go into... you can bump into one in a forest or in the desert or in the castle as well, right? Like in the castle is in the cell block. Like I found my first one in the cell block, and then I thought I'd just do the same thing I do with all of them and like just slash at him, run through the legs and all that, and the guy doesn't die. You got to get his eye out, right? Like,
Chase it around.
I thought that was really cool. Just that discovery that the skull version of this guy needed a different strategy to beat.
And that one specifically can creep on you because I was exploring near the castle, and there is a platform or a road nearby where it got late. It was dark, and all of a sudden I just turned around, and he's just coming over the next set of trees, and I'm like, I didn't know you were there, and it just freaked me out. Or there are other times you find the bones, but they don't become animated. Did anyone find out the answer? What wakes up a Stalnox? Do we know?
Magic.
I thought it was just certain nights.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe to be there when
you
I
can
turned
see the
night.
bones in some places. That discovery is really cool. I also love when you go to Eventide Island, and like if I went there with like 4 hearts,
Right, me too.
and I snuck on top of the sleeping dude to steal the orb, right? Like I love that concept that it's like Gulliver's Travels. Like this guy's so big and you're completely outmatched, and so you are stepping quietly around him.
Tiptoeing up his belly to steal the ball around his neck.
And he's all like scratchy. And
snoring.
and then you come back with like 12 hearts, and you're like, I don't care. I'm just going to take
he's
you
not-
out, right?
But that said, I'm totally with you in that I think I would have wanted a little more diversity in the bosses. The mini bosses around the world were a brilliant idea. Really, really, really cool. Once you actually got into the Divine Beast and you're fighting just variations of Ganon, and then eventually have to meet them again at the end, depending on what you do. That was cool too, but I think I would have wanted, just give me a couple gigantic lizards or a huge spider or,
Or lean on some of the classic notions
no
there.
spiders, man. Like classic Skulltulas. Nothing.
I think we'll get there eventually. As this new step in this direction for the franchise continues to evolve.
But let's not forget Guardians either. And like I thought, Guardians were so intimidating in the beginning of the game, where you go, the first time you meet one and they start shooting the laser, first of all, you're instantly dead.
Right.
Then you're like, all right, I respect your authority. I'm going to go around the wall into the shrine, right? And then by the time you have the Master Sword, you're like, leg off, leg off, leg off. You're riding into them with a freaking on top of a deer or something. Like,
you see
hopping in.
videos people are doing now.
It's like target. Oh my God! And someone just pop, 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 pop.
Or people like holding up shields, lasering them in the eye, and then doing selfie poses. Like it's really brilliant.
And then you freeze them with stasis too, and you feel super powerful when they're frozen.
That's the other thing too. Like when you go to the shrines where you're actually battling variations of them, and even the high level ones, you alternate between like freezing or like ice hour, and you can basically hit them without them even swinging or at you once. But
the Guardians.
Out in the world, the music that plays during them for the first few hours really suits your playstyle because it is frantic and insane. It's like and you're like they're shooting lasers at you all over the place. It's great.
I like the introductions though to the Thunderblight, the different forms of Ganon, which we're getting really close to story. I promise if you're listening.
You like the Ganon forms?
Well, I like the concept of them. I'm not sure if they were executed as well as they could.
Fits with the story for sure.
Thunderblight is my favorite. I like this idea too that he's sort of like Voldemort in this game, where he separated his soul and he has these 4 guardians like that he is watching over. And I thought that was cool. I love their introduction from an audio perspective because it's like bum 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 bum, and you're like, oh man, it's about to go down right here. I thought that was really cool. And Thunderblight is my favorite form because of how aggressive he was.
He is very aggressive.
Because of if you reach him early in the game, he almost feels impossible.
Yeah.
And in fact, he is the first boss.
Which beast was it?
He was in the camel, inside of Vanna Boris, and
So
he,
yeah, I had that one third.
He is the first time in that game a lot of, at least people I talked to, and myself included, should have considered stepping away.
Yeah.
Because you can. Like, there's an exit right there, and they give you the out if you're not ready for that fight. But I was like, no, I can beat this guy. And I stayed in until I did, and it feels so good.
Did it take you a while to figure out like the elements, like what you had to use to beat him, or did you go?
Doesn't appear until round 2. Round 1 is more you have to get your perfect dodge down in order to swipe at him. Or another way to do it, you can brute force it and just keep hitting his shield because it'll break.
Which is what I did.
And then
You have a big hammer, you can.
Yeah, so I would break his shield. He would have an opening. I would get an arrow shot in, and then before he regenerates his shield, you can get another shot on his eye. I was like the archer supreme in that fight because I had to bring the A level skills because I still didn't have enough hearts to really take him.
Right.
And if you fight him early enough, the lightning will doubly irritate you because it'll knock your weapon away.
Yeah.
So
Which, I know most people who were irritated, that was their
it's
thing.
scary being the first boss because you have so little hearts and he's such a big menace. I fought him last, and he actually scales. The order that you beat him in, the last one will always be a lot tougher.
Interesting.
And they'll do more damage. So he was actually tough for me, even though he was the last boss and I had a lot of hearts by that time, just because I was used to fighting all the more passive versions of Ganon Blights, and this one was so aggressive. I'm just like, whoa, let me just back off for a second.
I find that interesting because I wasn't sure that he scales. I know when you fought him, you put him down pretty fast.
See, I went to the beast so late. I had over 10 hearts already for the first beast. I just loved the world so much, and I got like on this like train of upgrading my hearts and my climbing power, my stamina, and just did shrine.
Yeah.
And so when I got there, he was a pushover, the first one.
Yeah.
But like the Thunder one was harder because like it has that kind of trick where you go, oh, I can use lightning against him, right? Like, and that took me a while. I'm like, what do I do now? I'm like, ugh, of course.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
it's
the
great.
feeling of that game where you get hit over the head with the immediate, I know what it is.
Yep.
So let's transition then. Let's talk about how Nintendo approached the story. And specifically, we're really trying to lean into this game's attempt to tell a story in a different way because the premise is so different. It is that for 100 years, this land just got wasted, and you're sort of awakened inside of it. You basically have amnesia, and you're trying to piece it together. And I thought that at least initially, the premise is interesting, and I thought the way they separated how they wanted to tell you that story was interesting because the story never really told itself to you in a talk down to you way. You had to find the moments in order to make it work.
I really, really like this game set itself up as sort of being a sequel to a Zelda game you never played.
But yeah, and I mean, to me, it felt a lot like Wind Waker, only that you were very alone in the beginning.
Yeah.
You didn't set out from some like tiny village and explore the world. It was like, what happened to Hyrule is the first thing you ask, and then like it just remains this mystery for much of the game as you kind of like do what the guy in Memento did and looked at his tattoos and starts to remember.
Right.
You know, like you gather all these memories and the story pieces itself together. I think one thing about the story, it's like, it didn't reveal major things like Wind Waker where the world was flooded on purpose or things like that. But like you learn more about, who built the Guardians and like what happened there.
You specifically learn your relationship to the champions, and specifically the one thing they're constantly trying to help you learn is who's Zelda and what was your relationship with her like. I find that the Memories quest does this smart thing where the first one is the first memory I tracked down, I feel is the one a lot of folks track down because it's the one that you can see Hyrule Castle off in the distance, and you figure, well, I know where that is, and that's how a lot of finding that quest line works, except for the harder ones where you're like, I have no effing clue where that is. But in that cutscene, you get fed the information that Zelda resents you. And that blew my mind for a second because it's never been told that way. It's always that you guys kind of work together, or hey, you go to the Skyloft school together. And
usually they just met. In a lot lot it's like you meet her or you rescue her.
You just met her, or in Twilight Princess, you just met her. In Wind Waker, she was somewhat a hero. In Ocarina of Time, she was a little girl you met.
You're inexperienced in all those games. This game starts very different. You're a badass in all the memories, right?
None of those really involve baggage. which this one does, which is very interesting to all of a sudden be like, what did I do and how do I fix it?
But in only following the cutscenes of this game, you don't really get the full picture of who she is. You get a partial image of who she is, right? Once you track down all these memories, because you find out more direct resentment. You find out her scientific side and when she grows to accept you and how she tried to get you to eat a frog. You see the moment she breaks down, which was a moment. I thought that was probably one of the strongest cutscenes in the game because it is the aftermath of a fight you didn't see. You know in your head stuff went down. You know in your head this was bad, but then to see her react to it. And granted, obviously, you can pick apart some of the performance and definitely some of the writing.
Which ones are you talking about?
Yeah, there was.
I thought the Zelda performance didn't match. It was like do a princess voice to me. Yeah. It's like there were some really good voice actors and performances in it, and she's probably a good voice actress as well. But that choice sounds very different from the other languages too. If you switch it to like German or Japanese.
Yeah, I mean, after years and years of people asking for voice acting in a Zelda game, I'm still not entirely convinced that we need one. I don't know if it necessarily added or took away from the overall experience. I think
you didn't like Rivali, didn't you think he came alive?
I thought he was great.
Like,
there were some really strong performances in this game, but had you taken all of them away, I don't think it would have made a significant impact in the way I perceived my interaction
I think
with
that
this
breakdown scene wouldn't have worked silently. I will say that. I agree with what you're saying, though.
Yeah,
and I do think that a majority of these cutscenes may have been better or with that improvement. Because I'm someone, too, who felt like the Zelda games don't need a voice, but in 2017, it's kind of a reality that production values everything in storytelling, right?
Do you remember when we first saw that story trailer and we had to go into the rewind theater and you had that real thing like, okay, I think all the scenes of Zelda in the white is in the past and all of them in the blue, that's the present. And we thought that was going to be how the story was told. And then we found out that Zelda's not actually anywhere in the game until the very, very end.
They were scenes from the past.
Yes, all of them were scenes from the past. I thought that was actually a very smart way of doing it because as I was thinking of that, I was like, well, if I want to go explore this world and I have Zelda waiting here at this rock saying, hey, meet me over here by this rock for this important cutscene. I'm like, nah, I'm going to go over here for like 5 years. And like that happened a lot in other open world games, like, Skyrim, where it's like, we got to go on this quest to defeat the dragons. Where are you? I'm going to go this way. Like you lose that sense of importance when you're going somewhere else. So having them kind of memories where no one's waiting for you. I mean, again, the whole threat there is there, but no one's actually like, hey, where have you been for the last 20 years.
Totally works. Like you have Impa, who's an old lady. She's not going anywhere, right? Like she's like a rock. Like you can go and talk to her and like check in on your quest. And then everyone else was almost like a reintroduction. Like you meet like a king or a leader and they're like, oh, you look a lot like this guy who, failed fighting Ganon.
I think
it was really smartly done.
Yeah. All that like world building that you got through side characters was really well done. And I feel like other games in the past...
the Master Sword?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like the games in the past in the Zelda series have touched on it, right? Like you get to a village, you get to a town. Skyward Sword had like some very lovable characters living in the towns and stuff like that. But when you walked into certain towns in this game, you believed that everyone lived there because they liked it and they wanted to be there, or they hated it and they wanted to get out. There was this believability to the world there that I think really lent itself to the story, and the way that history sat underneath all of it was really smart.
Yeah, and they don't paint specifics.
No.
I respect them for not doing that, and it's interesting because I got in a pretty heated conversation with a good friend who wanted more of that. And I don't blame him for that because I think every person's going to come to a Zelda game differently. And that's the kind of stories that he definitely loves. But for me, it was more, I kind of like not knowing. And I kind of like that I have the loose version of it because realistically, that made sense to me. Like, this is the aftermath. Yeah. And I'm piecing it together, and that's okay. But there wasn't a major revelation like the Wind Waker thing.
No.
And that's a good observation.
And I think it was, emotionally, I think it didn't hit the beats right. And like, it's hard to design a game that is this open and this broad, and like, where literally there can be 30 hours between you finding one story element of Zelda and the next one, right? It's very difficult to keep that momentum going. And I laud them for how they constructed it, but I felt like the memories didn't always hit. Like they needed to be a little bit more emotional baggage to the entire world being wiped out. Yeah. Like I wanted to see more of like what happened to like the close confidence and the characters that mattered. Like they started to build out like almost a there was this over-reliance on technology on Zelda's part, right? Like, she was really excited about using technology as the answer because she thought she didn't have it in herself, right? So that was the easy crutch for her to go to. And they were showing these scenes where they were testing one of the Guardians, remember that? Like one of the stalkers, and like it looks around and it's almost like cute the way it's acting. And like, they're not cute once you fought them.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. And then I felt like the moment where the Guardians turn on people needed to be developed and shown differently.
Shown a little
like that
more,
needed to be the big emotional impact. And I had, I finished Final Fantasy 15 as well, which has all these crazy emotional moments. Like even after the credits, you keep watching, you're like, oh man, I'm cutting some onions right now, right? Like it's very heavy, and Zelda doesn't need to have that. But I felt like you need a little bit more oomph.
But this was almost, to me, this was Revenge of the Jedi. Like this was like we lost, and you survived. Yeah. And we need you to, because everyone who talks to you in this game who knows who you are is dead. Like, I mean, you learn very early on the king is no more, and he reveals himself and tells you, we've got a problem. And then you meet the champions, and you are put in touch with these memories of them, but at the same time, they're dead when you complete those dungeons. And even though they take control of those beasts again, it is very much kind of a darker, sadder story to some extent. Not darker.
But they didn't tell it well enough. Like if you had seen the champions die in a meaningful way, where at the end, like you were getting more and more pissed at Ganon for what he has wrought. Like then I feel like that would have worked better. Like I was never like Ganon to me was this force of nature, and it wasn't like in Ocarina of Time where he was this man and like he was kind of like.
But I think we're
transformed to a beast.
Attachment to the champions to just general storytelling of like this happened, and I think to me I was more impacted by that than say having to see them die.
I think there's a story beat that could have been in there though, because all of them just say like, oh yeah, that's that guy who killed me, good luck. I'm like, really, is that all that happened? Like you guys were supposed to be the best of the best. Like I want to see like how could they beat you.
Yeah. And then you do get that moment of like when you got all the divine beasts and like you guys all beat Ganon with all four, or did you do it without him?
I tried it both ways.
Okay, we want to know what happens, but like I did it with all four, and of course all of them get triggered, and that is a cool moment, right? It's like bam, 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 and it takes off lots of his
health,
and you're like, this really helps.
So if you go to the castle without defeating the divine beasts, which I did on a whim because I was like, I finally want to experience this, you basically have to fight all forms of Ganon one at a time in that throne room, and the fight is somewhat different because, for example, Water Blight Ganon doesn't flood the room.
You're in that sanctum in the top area.
No, he knows where. You basically have to sort of handle the same fight there, and sometimes the fights are the same, and sometimes they're not.
You get a kind of a crutch.
Which I thought was cool.
So much work put into this, the non-linear nature. It's crazy.
And the way you mentioned it, where you take out all four, and then it takes off half of Calamity, like the final form of Calamity Ganon's health, who didn't really look like Ganon, by the way. He looked like something out of a cyborg action picture. Like that was a really weird, strange look.
Well,
for him.
they leaned into that sort of like cyberpunk used future look for a lot of stuff in the game, which I actually really liked. It's very odd to sort of do used future and then that sort of like kind of tangible wooden earthly environmental stuff mashing together at the same time. And the way they did it was with like light and lasers, but then also like very kind of ancient looking etchings and stuff.
They had Japanese Jomon culture, right? And ancient Japanese culture influence all the design,
which is really cool. That article going around where we were kind of geeking out about that. But I think that the end result of you just being in this big field that was sort of barren and then fighting this like pig monster on all 4 feet was kind of like it kind of ended with a whimper. Like it felt sort of just like, I don't know, it just felt like the end of like a very generic kind of 90s video game. Like I thought that it was so much invention and so much like ingenuity and almost everything else around this game. And then it ended with that. And I compare that to say like the last moment in Wind Waker, or even like Twilight Princess had a very similar approach where you're out in the field and you're fighting Ganon in his final form. But this was just like you're on a horse.
It was a culmination of 4 different boss phases where you had to fight the puppet Zelda, and you fight the beast, and you fight him on horse. horseback.
good point.
And that final clash one-on-one. Like that was...
Or even Ocarina of Time. That's the one that shaped it all, right?
Yeah. Wind Waker has the stabbing the sword into the head of Ganon, and like everyone who does it is like, whoa.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing like you think about. You think about when you picture Wind Waker, you picture him with that like happy little face and sneaking around, and then you picture that, and you're like, oh, that's right.
And then Twilight Princess had the emotional beat of the very first thing, which annoyed everybody. The very first thing you learn is to tackle the beasts and knock them over, and that becomes the key to beating beating Ganon's like beast form. Like
thematically, having the final boss be Ganon Unleashed made sense because this was a Ganon who just at the very end of all these whatever timelines, sometimes he goes, he's done being Ganondorf. He just wants to rage across the world. That made sense to me, but just like the whole like, oh, you just gotta shoot Nye. Okay, we're done.
Even when she says the line, you have to shoot him in the glowing spots. I kind of twitched for a second. I was like, wait, really? This is where we lead.
Star Fox.
It felt very video game.
It
Shoot
did.
the glowing spots.
I didn't come to terms with it until I looked at it as, well, this is a sealing ritual. This is the moment that the game is constantly talking about that they trained you for. It's just a shame they didn't find a way to make that more interesting.
Totally.
And it made me very conflicted at the end because I almost was like, yeah, that was a whimper. And then you get that cutscene at the end, which there are two forms of. And you get one, which before the credits roll, ends with, thank you, and do you remember me? And then it's roll credits. And if you track down all the memories, you got an extra ending. If you didn't, you did not. And so that was it. And so I almost feel for anyone who didn't finish the game with every memory captured because you didn't get anything that felt complete.
Also, one of the few Zelda games where the credits were just kind of empty. There was no like credit sequence of like, here's how everyone's coping now that you've beaten the final boss.
They do the kind of camera showing all kind of like the side characters and what they do.
I kind of missed that.
I think the challenge with that though could be that this is kind of 100 years of solitude for better or for worse. Like there isn't.
It would have been like a lot of open world or games where you can have multiple choices would like go like, oh hey, you help those people, now they're prospering. Like
show Sidon, show like each of the new heroes. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think they realized they'll never top the ending credits to Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo, so why bother?
Link to the Past has a really nice credit sequence.
It does.
Which culminates in Link. Basically, the sword is back and it sleeps forever, right? Like it's such a great beat too.
I love
but I did like in this game. I did like the Do You Remember Me? I think the delivery wasn't good and like that could have been done better. But like that kind of question mark where you go like, yeah, it was a quest for identity, and you were recovering these memories and really figuring out who this Link was. Usually it's like a young boy and he's nobody. In this case, this guy was somebody. He was the second in command to the princess and all of that.
He had a dad.
There was all this, and then you get this question mark. Do you remember me? And you're like, yeah, now I remember like how powerful Zelda is after this battle too. She rediscovered that. And then the post-credit sequence is more of the kind of forward-looking, happy ending where you now realize that the work is just starting. The world is destroyed, and somebody's got to rebuild it, and that's where Zelda comes in, right? Like, she gives life, and, like, she knows where to go next. Link wouldn't know. You probably just sit down and, like, fry some more bokoblin guts or something. But, like, Zelda's got a plan. Like, she's ready to take you somewhere and continue.
See, I feel that those are all strong things. I'm just not sure that they nailed it.
No, they didn't. No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, you're right in that.
And some of it is like, Fire Emblem has really nice kind of cutscene storytelling, and like the studio that works on them puts a lot into it. I think this game was so huge, that I don't think they spent quite enough time making sure that the storytelling was as good as it could be. And then it's also the translation, right? New voices again on top of that. I don't know how much time they spent on that.
Yeah.
I would love to play the Japanese version just to get a better sense of
maybe
the
this
pacing there.
thinking too is that you don't show a post-credit sequence because you do want to build on this in some sort of sequel way, and you're not like just putting a bow on it at the end. There is that
you get to play the post game.
That's true. Yeah, it does immediately
and
kick you
in a
back
certain
in the world.
sense.
it's not really the post game.
It's not like Red Dead Redemption where you get to play the post game.
You get the revenge
In a way, the game has not ended.
Right.
Yeah.
It resets
Having
you.
the end and like that.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the same. I guess
It's not the same, but it does let you go like, oh, well, there's no rebuilding because I'm not done yet.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point as well. Let's go down our favorites. We've talked about this game to death now for at least 57 minutes, according to the lovely prompter. But I wanted to quickly just sort of go down the list of the things, certain things that stood out to us. And I picked different categories in the hopes of just generating a little more discussion before we call it the end to the immaculate spoiler cast that we've been planning forever. So let's lead with favorite champion. Did you have a favorite champion?
Yeah, mine was Rivali.
Okay. Why?
Ravioli?
Ravioli. Because it sounds the most like Italian food. You got me. That's my answer. I don't have to say anything else. That's perfect. No,
I hope not. Like, is that it?
I love that whole setup. I love the voice acting around that. I know I said before, like, I could have taken or leaving the voice acting. That's one of the scenarios where I thought it worked really well.
Great. Yeah.
So he's the only guy that's not like fawning over you. He's just like, so what if you're the hero? I don't care.
Yeah, I really liked that. And he felt very Star Foxy almost,
Totally, it was total Falco.
Yeah, totally Falco.
Mine was Urbosa, the Gerudo champion.
Yeah.
I just thought, first of all, the performance was great. She was awesome, great voice. And I just loved the concept of like this kind of strong warrior who still fell to this battle. And like she kind of had like a sarcastic tone to her. And you knew that like when you unleashed her power in the end, she would, she would bring
jokey
it.
side. She just snapped her fingers and like woke up Zelda, and I thought I had the same answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Also was my favorite because she was this pillar of strength.
Right.
That I thought was also very reserved, and just out of all of them, each one of them had different personality. Rivali was kind of the boastful, like braggart,
Kinda
like
snarky
really,
too.
Yeah, there's plenty of versions of him on the internet. The Goron was.
I like the Rook's theme the best. Like his music was beautiful. It was haunting, but also like very strong and like this melancholy feel. But my favorite champion is Mipha. I'm sorry, Link was robbed. He should have had his fish wife who made him a wedding present of a tailor-fit Zora armor, and he's like, oh, by the way, she's dead. Guess I get to go with Zelda now.
He's also one of the only ones you ride into battle. Like you look, but if you look at someone like Rivali and like that whole sequence, we just did it again during Link Together the other day. He's like just not even there. You're up in the sky, like shooting arrows and stuff like that. And you're like, where is this bird?
Drawing fire allegedly. Yeah.
Like if you imagine like for Sidon too. Like I would love to see Sidon and Link go on adventures together because like. That character was so realized. He just like loves Link. He's like, Link, you're the coolest guy ever. Let's go do things. I'm so happy you're here.
I thought he'd be like a vehicle for the rest of the game. Like you could just call him in.
Just whistle for Sidon.
Just go boating.
Yeah. Kind of like the broomstick in Link Between Worlds.
Yeah.
The witch who would come to like help you
get the
around.
little ocarina, you summon the bird to come by and grab you.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. So your favorite characters in the overworld.
I've talked about this one in the past on the show, but I really, really liked that lady who lives on the beach who's insane.
Who loves the ball?
Like that to me was just like, you are so off the beaten path. You are so far from where you need to be doing anything specifically in that game. There's not even a lot like story-wise to even do that in there that even makes sense. But you're just like, I'm gonna go run along the beach. I'm on a horse. It feels like Planet of the Apes. And you turn the corner and there's just this crazy woman that's like, find me pictures of the Guardians. I want to find them so I can let go of this ball. I really love this ball. I love the Guardians. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with this woman?
Everyone takes the photo and tweets it. The minute they find her, like, what the heck is
And you just come back with your phone and you're like, look at all these pictures I got. And she's like, oh my God.
You tried to take the ball and she's not having it either.
So weird.
There's a lot of crazy characters. The one by the flower shrine.
Oh God, yeah.
And if you do it enough, she goes like, I tried to tell you. She just like runs around screaming and then like falls down. She goes like, yeah, I tried to tell you not to touch a flower. She just runs at you and then like Link screams and it fades to black. Like,
She beats you within an inch of your life. Like, yeah, because you stepped on her flowers.
So my favorite is, it's not an overworld character, it's the clan leader for the Yiga.
Oh, yeah.
And like I guess that's a mini boss, but it's played for laughs.
What's his name? Master Koga.
Master Koga. Yeah. And that's because he's like the hubris. Like he thinks he's the coolest person. He can't be defeated. He's got his bananas in his pocket and everything, right? Like he thinks he's got it all. And then it's the easiest, stupidest way to defeat him by just kind of letting his stupid spiky balls drop on his head, and he just gets so angry at you.
It felt like
little like getting angry, like
so
It
angry.
felt like so 70s, 80s Japanese animation. Like that whole thing, like the humor and the goofiness to that. And when he builds up to his final form and then just falls, and you're like, wait, that's it? All right, bye.
And then it's like, it reminds me of like Borderlands had a famous like tiny little boss that where you think it's going to be something great and it's not. And then of course that battle sets up the fact that you are now hunted by all of the clan members. You know, you hear the ha ha ha, and like they appear and like.
And I want to believe that this is proof that the Zelda and Kong universe are somehow intertwined because all of the Yiga members love bananas.
Yeah.
And it's this unhealthy obsession.
They have a banana horde too. Did you see it?
Oh yeah, I found it in the
Donkey Kong
Yiga
cry.
base.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what is?
Collect like 30
Did you
bananas.
ever drop one in front of like the big burly guy? Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. They go
you're like,
crazy.
are you kidding me?
They make monkey noises. I think they're monkeys in disguise.
And again, storytelling
Heard
for
it on
that is
NBC.
so brilliant because like you encounter these guys and whenever you kill them, a banana is left behind. And you go like, what is with the banana?
That's how you
Right?
know it was Yiga.
And so of course
Means
you
banana in Japanese.
like when you figure out that you drop a banana in front of one and they're distracted by it, I think it's so brilliant, the way that's constructed. What's
so
your favorite?
Mine. So this is weird to put this guy as my favorite, but I thought this was really creepy and funny, and much like Brian's ball lady, Bullseye. This was the dude with the boots quest. Because you find him.
Who's in love with you?
No, so hang on, let's talk about him. That guy is so desperate for a girl. He is hanging out outside of the only town where there is one, it's just all females, and waiting for the right one.
He
And
just
the
runs around
only reason
outside.
he spits game at you is because you approach him as a woman. If you approach him as male Link, he's like, I am not interested, keep it moving.
Yeah.
And I thought that was hilarious because they worked in a ridiculous reason for why he is where he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double entendre. He's in a desert and he's also thirsty.
I just also love that he has two pairs of boots together.
I also love Link's sassy response where you're just like, it's like, oh, so you want to go? Give me the boots. Well, what? Give me the boots.
Yeah, the responses. Link was sassy in this game.
love it.
Man.
Yeah. And the Gerudo area, if I can go into favorite town, I'll lead off. Gerudo area, I think was my favorite because there were some of the wackiest, silliest Master Koga, the Yiga clan. The fact that you have to dress up as a Gerudo, which I never thought
Did
Zelda
you go
would do.
into the dating room, like the dating school?
Oh God, no, I didn't.
So hilarious.
There's a dating school?
There's a like how to date Vi's or Vos, and like there's like a whole class you can attend. You can kind of like be like on the side as like the Hylian person, and they're like, okay, so let's say you're going down a road and you see a Vo. What do you do? And then like one girl's like, oh, I would like greet him with an open hand, show I wasn't having weapons. That's pretty good. What about you? I'd punch him in the face.
There's
good.
just so much comedy in that area, including when you meet the person to give you the outfit to be a woman. Because the minute you see him, you're like, that's a dude. Oh my God. And they do that joke with the cinematic of the real watch out for the wind. And you just see his veil go up.
Yeah.
And Link is like horrified.
What was the reason for him?
He was just trying to pick up everyone in the Gerudo area who was a guy was
It was just
thirsty.
all disguised.
They just wanted something to. It's the post-apocalypse, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
If there are children listening, do not tell them what that means.
It was very. I felt it was very fairy tale like.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of kind of like this innocent fairy tale storytelling, like the Arabian Nights kind of stuff. Like in this case with Gerudo, there were a lot of cool little small characters.
Yeah,
Like the date, there's like the lovesick guy next to the heart pond, who meets a tall Gerudo lady too. I don't know if you found them.
No, I did,
Like
yeah.
in various random areas, you find cool things. And let's not forget everybody's favorite dancing Korok.
Yeah.
With the maracas.
Yeah, I love
S2
dropping
is like
rocks.
the Tingle Korok love child.
Frame rate destroying maracas.
It bummed me out that there was no Tingle on Tingle Island, but there is mention of him in one of the books in Gerudo Village. Did you find it?
That's dope.
It's like a diary entry from this guy who's like, I'm 35 and I still don't have a fairy. Like, I don't
didn't
know
find
what's
that.
going on here.
my God.
It's really sad.
He out there?
Yeah, I think he's out there,
I was trying to piece together all the hints to figure out where this game fell in the timeline, and like that's
that.
obviously like the presence of certain villages, names, the Tingle, all the Tingle Brothers Island names, like it all suggested like it would be it's after Ocarina, after Wind Waker, after Spirit Tracks, all these games somewhere. It's never defined and it's never clear where it falls. You find the ruins of Lon Lon Ranch, so obviously obviously there had to be a Lon Lon Ranch before. But I love that it had little tie-ins with all these different.
It's a nice
different
melting pot
games.
of every Zelda thing. You can find something from everything. I think that's really cute.
And honestly, they probably, again, didn't really think it through all the way. They're like, we're not going to make sure it all fits neatly into a timeline. And then some poor Saab has to explain it. In the end, it's like, a third timeline where Link was.
For towns, did you guys build Terrytown?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Terrytown is hands down my favorite quest, my favorite town, my favorite characters, all rolled into one. And it only happens after you find the homeowner quest to make your own home. And once you get all the resources, you give them the money, it's like, okay, cool, you did it, let's build a house. And you had to build all the upgrades. Then he's like, all right, hey, Hudson, I need you to go off to the Akala region. And he's like, you better talk to him first. I'm like, well, okay, what? Why? So I talked to the company. He's like, yeah, I guess I'm going over to Akala. See you later. Yeah. And that plays this really weird jingle as he just walks off into the sunset. It's like,
music was
what
so
was that?
good.
And then so I follow him, and he's like, hey, I'm building a town out here in the Akala region. You want to help me? I need like 500 pieces of wood. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, oh yeah, I also need some people here too. But according to the Bolson construction thing, they have to have the end name ending in son.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All
it becomes like
Swedish.
this becomes this quest of having to build this town by finding like the zaniest characters who are just plucked from different regions.
Because then you start thinking, you're like, who have I met, right?
And every time you find that person, and they're just like, hey, there's a town over here. He's like, okay, cool. Da-na. And they just like walk off.
He's like effectively building a multicultural sovereign nation. Like he's just like, I want to start.
I was worried it was like Jonestown or something. Like there's some weird cult in the making.
It probably is.
Yeah.
The most beautiful part is the more you build the town, the more the town music comes alive, and it starts taking up parts of every other town you've been to. So you'll hear like the Gerudo music kind of pop up for a bit, and you hear Kakariko pop up. You hear like the horns, and like
That's really smart.
This is amazing. And then the very end, you have to find someone to marry, two people in the town, and there's this whole like wedding sequence straight on Majora's Mask. I'm just like, this is beautiful.
And then I also love that they actually had the element that the characters would move from a town away. Like you used to be able to go to your house and upgrade your house, but now the construction guys weren't there, right? Like they were there for the wedding. It was cool that they actually added all these very special things. And like the lights out forest to me was really cool. By the way, Salamander, when you first walk in and it's all dark, freaking amazing.
Best
that was so
beginning
cool
of a
too.
Divine Beast ever. Okay, right, lightning round because we're out of time. So favorite Divine Beast, go.
Bird.
Varudania?
Which is
Lizard.
the lizard. Thanks.
Camel, which is, I
Same.
know not a lot of
Omnivorous.
people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Favorite one by far.
Just love the tumblers. So cool.
Favorite boss, go.
I was saying Master Koga, Ganon, the Windblade Ganon, actually, I really like that one because
cool,
the way you could gust up in the air and slow down arrows on him and stuff.
Calamity Canyon.
Okay.
It was Molduga, the sandworms, until I figured out how to easy do them, and it's Stalnox. I just love that it has multiple elements to it.
All right. And mine was Thunderblight Ganon, followed very closely, though, by Calamity Ganon, I will say. All right. Sorry we had to rush that, but it's just...
Really quick shout out to Eventide Island because we didn't mention it once, but it's
so good.
Watch our bit fight on that.
Yeah.
Survivor Hyrule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was also very Link's Awakening to me. And same with Lurelin Village, which was,
But that's the thing. There's so many different places. And I love Kakariko Village being this Japanese town, right? Was really cool to just explore. And then you go, it's ringed by mountains, and they're like Korok hidden there, and treasure chests, and then in the water is a treasure chest.
Yeah.
Just like this richness of the world. Yeah. You could explore places you'd been to 5 times and delve deeper into them.
Find something new.
In the mountains, giant doors, and then you go, I can snowboard down, and there's some poor woman living in a village with all the shields on the wall, take pictures.
Yeah, the doors in the mountain were great, and I love that there was a lady who was the best shield surfer of all time.
Yes, that was her, yeah.
There was a lot of things buried. I almost feel...
Quest for giant Leviathan bones. The game is packed with unique quests.
This game definitely is one I feel like I will never forget. It feels like one of those highlights of a career where you're just like, yeah, I did that, or we experienced that. Our generation was first to that game. And man, let me tell you, you could not believe the impact. even the way it took over this office, and even the way it took over like the internet.
This industry, it's
still
gamers everywhere.
It's
Like
still my travel go-to game. Whenever I'm on a plane or something, I'm done. I mean, 160 hours into that game, I should be done. I still go for quests to upgrade my armor.
that's the thing. I mean, on top of everything else, this is a portable game.
Yeah.
Right. To have a world this big in your pocket, if you have Jinko jeans on, but or a backpack.
Yeah, maybe.
The idea of that is just so special to me, and I really love the fact that we are just getting started with this game. The videos that are breaking out now, the one you just did recently, where you built a mine car, like a go-kart. The shrine hacks that people are doing now, the speedrun stuff, the fact that there's DLC coming,
yeah.
like, this is and I think the way we're going to see this inspire games for years and years to come, it just really is a testament to how special and wonderful this thing is.
Yeah, and I look forward to that. It is definitely something that, and especially when the DLC comes around, if you're like me, who I had to put it down because I had other things to worry about,
Right.
I plan to very much pick that game back up and find those last 23 shrines and just put
I'm done with the shrines. I got all the shrines. I'm never going to do the 900 Korok leaves, but I am going to upgrade.
800?
800?
900.
900.
Yeah.
Did you do them?
I'm still in the process. This has been the most stressful and fun guide to write.
But I'll definitely do, and your map, I mean, if you search for a Breath of the Wild map, you'll find an awesome interactive map where you can toggle on things like the leaves and the shrines, and it'll help you find them at least. Like I found the shrine map when I was at 112 shrines. I found the shrine map so helpful. I didn't know how to raise them or find them, but I knew what area they
You
were
click
in.
like you want more
I used
description.
that.
If you want to hold back, you're welcome to do so.
Right.
All right, well, thank you for listening to Nintendo Voice Chat. We're a weekly show on IGN, and next week we are going to go kart crazy because we're going to be talking about Mario Kart as well as whatever's going on.
Puyo Tetris.
Wonder
Puyo
Boy.
Tetris,
Love it.
Wonder Boy, the Dragon's Trap. There's a lot to talk about. So thank you for listening, for watching. You can always leave us feedback at mvc@ign.com. Just email that address or head on over to iTunes or your favorite podcast service and leave us a review if that's an option. Lastly, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Brendan Graeber
At Raga_Fraga.
You can find Brian Altano
At Agent Bizzle.
and you can find Per Schneider
At Pair IGN.
You can find myself, Jose_Otero. Thank you so much, and we'll be back next week with more Nintendo Voice Chat.
Bye.